Now we're going to look at inequalities where we've got two lines, two inequalities. So what we do is we have to graph both of them on the same grid. So I graphed this first equation, and here's my second one over here. The first equation, again, I want to solve for y, so I go ahead and subtract my 2x, and I get 4y is greater than or equal to negative 2x plus 5. And then I go ahead and divide by 4, and I get y is greater than or equal to negative 1/2 x plus 5/4. And then I want to go ahead and plot that on my grid. So I start at 5/4, which would be 1 1/4. And then from there I go down 1 over 2, which would be about right there. And because it's a greater than or equal to, I'm going to make a solid line and shade above. Again, because I got rain on the top of my house. So now I have to come back and graph the y is greater than or equal to 1. Well, if it was x equals 1, it means that I would go to 1 on the x-axis, put a dot, and make a vertical line. It has undefined slope. And because this actually is an equal to, I can make that a solid line. And it also means that I'm going to shade, because it's bigger than. Now, this is the case where you don't think about a house where I shade above or below. The only time where I think left to right is when it's an x equals. I think about left to right. Well, which side would be bigger? Because it does say bigger than or equal to 1. Well, bigger than 1 would be to the right. So that's this area here. Now, the actual correct answer is the place where you have double shading. And I'll fill that in here with yellow. So the double shading is the actual answer. And that is the intersection of two inequalities. And means you're worried about where are they both shaded. Now the key word there that I didn't actually make a note of earlier was the fact that it does actually say and. Or is going to make a big difference. And means wherever the overlap is. And is overlap. Okay? So now let's check out an or. Now, as you can see, this is exactly the same graph I had before, so I'm just going to go ahead and plot it just like I had on the last graph. And what we'll see is that as I shade each one, this time we're looking at or. Or is flexible. In other words, it's where either is shaded. So this time the answer I'll put in orange is actually everything where there's any shading. Doesn't matter if it was overlap or not, any shading at all, that is your answer. So or makes a big difference, it's either. Same graph, same process, it's just when the word or is there, you shade either direction. And finally, we've got absolute value graphs. When you do an absolute value graph, what you have to do is you write that x is less than, the absolute value of x is less than 4, which means that x is actually less than 4, and then you actually rewrite it to be x is greater than or equal to negative 4. Because what you do here is when you're solving inequalities, you always write it once the way it's written, and then you write it again by changing the sign of the answer to be negative. And whenever you change the negative, you have to flip the sign. So we write it twice. Now, there's the word less than, and then there's greater. Now, less than looks like that, greater looks like that, and whenever we have less than, it's actually less than, which means that I want to write the word and in here. Okay? If it's greater, it's actually greater, which means I would write the word or. Here we have an and, because it's less than originally. So what that means is when I plot it, I go to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, draw my dashed line this time, because this is not equal to, and then I go to negative 4, draw my dashed line, and means I shade below 4, and above the negative 4, and the overlap is everything that's in the middle here. Okay? Now, if this was absolute value of x was greater than 4, then what you would do is say that x is greater than 4 or x is less than negative 4. Okay, so the sign greater means you use an or in the middle, and it changes this sign here. So the way that this works is that as I graph the line, so I would do my dotted line on the 4, and it says bigger than 4, so I shade above. And then I go to negative 4, do my dotted line, and I shade less than 4. Now because it's overlap, or because it's or, you can use either, so I have answer over here, and I have my answer over here, it's just not in the middle.